It was one of those mornings where everything felt just right, the kind of peaceful, warm sunlight that only a quiet ranch morning could offer. Horses rustled softly in the barn. The wind carried the scent of hay and earth, and birds chirped in a steady rhythm that made you forget the world outside. My wife Danielle was already out by the barn, wearing her usual ranch vest, clipboard in hand, inspecting the feed barrels and checking in with the stable hands. It was her routine every Sunday. Calm, steady, efficient, just the way she liked it until a screech of tires on gravel cracked the silence like a shotgun. That's when trouble pulled in. A silver SUV stopped in front of the barn gates, and the driver's side door swung open before the engine even died. Out stepped Karen. Short blonde bob, overly stiff posture, sunglasses too big for her face, and that ever-present HOA clipboard in her grip like it was some kind of legal sword. She marched forward with her mouth already open, shouting before she was even close enough to be heard clearly. "Excuse me, I told you before, this barn violates zoning codes. You can't be operating a commercial structure this close to the eastern fence line." Danielle looked up from her clipboard.com as ever and tilted her head. "Karen, this is our private ranch. This land isn't even within the HOA boundary. You know that." But Karen didn't stop. She never did. That was the thing about people like her. Once they made up their mind about something, logic and maps didn't matter. Reality was optional. "Don't give me that," Karen snapped, walking past the private property sign like it didn't exist. "I have full HOA jurisdiction, and I have received multiple complaints about this barn. Noise, smells, people working odd hours. I don't care who you think you are, but you can't run this like it's a business in a residential area." I walked up slowly from the side pasture where I had been checking the fencing line. I stayed quiet, just observing at first. Karen was working herself into a frenzy, her voice getting louder, more dramatic. Her favorite trick: make a scene. My wife just stood there, arms crossed now, letting her speak. "This barn is not a business," Danielle said after Karen finally stopped for breath. "It's a private ranch facility on land we own outright, and your HOA has no legal authority here. You've been told this more than once." "Oh, really?" Karen scoffed. "Then why was I told to enforce these zoning rules by the community council?" Danielle sighed. "Because you're not listening. They told you to follow protocol, not to harass homeowners. That did it." Karen's face went red, almost purple. "Harass? You think I'm harassing you? You're threatening me right now. Standing here with your attitude and your big buildings, I should call the police." Danielle didn't flinch. She just raised an eyebrow. "Go ahead." That, of course, was the wrong thing to say to Karen. Or maybe it was exactly the right thing. Her fingers were already tapping furiously on her phone. She stepped back dramatically, voice rising again. "Yes, hello, I need the police. There's a woman here at 394 Millstone Ranch trespassing, threatening me. She may be armed." My mouth dropped open slightly. She was calling 911 on my wife for standing on our land, doing nothing but existing. This woman had truly lost it. I took a step forward, but Danielle gently placed her hand on my arm. "Let her," she whispered. "This is gonna be good." Karen paced by her SUV, eyes darting back and forth, watching us like we were criminals. She added a few more dramatic touches to her call. "She's staring at me like she wants to hurt me," then hung up and crossed her arms. "You'll be sorry. When they get here, you're going to jail for trespassing and threatening a community official." Danielle smiled, looking forward to it. I couldn't help it. I chuckled. Karen's eyes narrowed. "You think this is funny? This is serious. I'm the president of the HOA. I finally stepped in." "Karen, let me ask you something. Do you even know who my wife is?" "I don't care who she is," she snapped. "She's a rule breaker. She thinks she's above the law." I grinned. "Well, that's going to be interesting when the law shows up." Danielle stayed quiet, her arms still folded, letting Karen stew in her own noise. I could see the gears turning in Karen's head, trying to justify her actions, trying to convince herself she was the hero here. After all, in her mind, she was defending the neighborhood, protecting the community, standing up to the invaders. It never once occurred to her that she might be the villain. 10 minutes passed. We could hear the sirens before we saw the cruisers. Karen lit up, practically hopping in place. "Finally, you're done now. Watch what happens." 2 sheriff's cruisers rolled up the gravel road. Dust trailed behind them like smoke. The doors opened, and 2 deputies stepped out, hands near their belts, eyes scanning the area. Karen ran to them like a damsel in distress. "There she is," she cried, pointing to Danielle. "That woman is trespassing and threatening me. She says she owns this property, but she's lying." The officers looked at Karen, then at Danielle. One of them paused. His face changed subtly, like he recognized her. I saw it before anyone else did. Danielle took a step forward and reached into her vest. Calm, smooth, no panic, no hurry. She pulled out her badge. "Chief Danielle Myers," she said clearly, holding it up. "Newly appointed county police chief. Reporting for duty." Karen froze. The color drained from her face like someone pulled the plug on her ego. The two deputies exchanged a look. One nodded slightly in recognition. Karen stammered, "Wait, what?" And that's when the real fun began. The air was so thick with awkward tension you could practically slice it with a shovel. Karen's smug expression had vanished completely, replaced by this blank, stunned look, like someone had flipped her reality upside down. She opened her mouth, then shut it again, clearly trying to process the fact that the woman she had just called the cops on was not only innocent, but the highest-ranking law enforcement officer in the entire county. My wife didn't gloat. That's never been her style. But she held her badge steady, clearly and calmly, so there would be no confusion. The deputies glanced between her and Karen like they were trying to figure out if this was some kind of prank, ma'am. One of them finally said to Danielle, "Did you say you were the new police chief?" Danielle nodded. "Yes, I was sworn in last Wednesday. County appointment. You can confirm it with dispatch or the sheriff himself." The second deputy pulled out his radio immediately. "Control, can we get a verification on badge ID 3-7-2-9-Delta-Mike? Name Danielle Myers, possible police chief." There was a pause, and Karen looked like she was hoping the universe would glitch and undo everything. But it didn't. The radio crackled back within seconds. "Confirmed. That's it. Myers is the newly appointed chief of county police. Full authority." Karen's jaw dropped. She actually staggered back a step like she'd just been hit. "This has to be a joke," she muttered. "This isn't real." She never said anything. She never wears a uniform. Danielle remained still, composed, badge still visible. "I don't need to wear a uniform every day to be chief. And just because I didn't introduce myself to you doesn't give you the right to make false accusations or call 911 on someone doing nothing wrong." The deputies turned to Karen. Their tone shifted, no longer neutral, now firm and suspicious. "Ma'am, can you explain exactly what you told dispatch when you called?" Karen's lips quivered. I said there was a trespasser. She was yelling. She might have been armed. I didn't know who she was. Did she make any threats?" The deputy asked. "Did she brandish a weapon? Was there any physical altercation?" "No, but she was very assertive." Karen tried. "She told me I had no authority. Because you don't, I jumped in, unable to hold it anymore. You've been harassing us for months." "Karen, this ranch is not under HOA control. It never was. You just made up rules and pretended they applied to us." Karen spun to me, now desperate to shift the blame. "She didn't say she was police. If she had, I wouldn't have called anyone." Danielle lowered her badge slowly and took a step forward. Her voice was calm but sharp now. "So let me get this straight. You trespassed on private property, refused to leave, ignored posted signs, and then made a false emergency call to 911, claiming someone was armed and threatening you when in reality, I was standing on my own land, saying nothing illegal or inappropriate. That about right?" Karen was speechless, completely cornered. One of the deputies pulled out a small notepad. "Ma'am, I'm going to need your full name. We'll need a formal statement from you. Filing a false police report is a criminal offense. You're investigating me now?" Karen shouted, her voice pitching into that signature HOA. Karen screeched, "I'm the victim here. She tricked me. She baited me into calling the cops." "Nobody baited you," the deputy said, writing calmly. "You made a false emergency call. That's a misuse of public resources, and you may also be liable for harassment." Karen looked like she wanted to run, but where would she go? Her car, back to her precious HOA board. My wife walked toward the fence line and motioned to a few ranch workers who had stopped what they were doing and were quietly watching the scene unfold. "Everything okay, boss?" one of them asked. "It is now," Danielle replied. "Go back to work." The deputies asked Karen to sit on the tailgate of her own SUV while they gathered more information. One of them took pictures of the barn area, the posted signs, and the gate. Another walked the perimeter to confirm property lines. "We've had issues with her before," I told them. "She showed up unannounced, filmed us without consent, sent bogus code violations taped to our mailbox. She's even yelled at our delivery guy claiming he was violating neighborhood rules by driving a diesel truck after 6 p.m. The deputy nodded. "Sounds like a pattern. If you have any of that on file, it would help us build a proper report. We can't allow anyone to weaponize the 911 system over personal disputes." Karen sat in silence now, shoulders slumped, her power drained. That was the thing about people like her, they relied on fear. As long as they believed they were the loudest and most official voice in the room, they had control. But now, faced with real legitimate authority, she had nothing. Not a single card left to play. Danielle turned to the officers again. "We won't press full charges right now," she said, "but I do want this incident on file, and I want it clear that if she ever steps foot on this ranch again without legal cause, we will pursue trespassing charges." "Understood," said the senior deputy. "We'll file this under a formal warning. You'll both get a copy of the report." Karen looked up, her voice suddenly softer. "So, that's it. I'm just supposed to leave. That would be the smartest thing you've said all day, I muttered. Danielle didn't even look at her. She turned toward the barn, already done with the conversation. Enjoy your afternoon, Karen. Don't come back. And with that, Karen slid off her tailgate, got into her car, and drove off without another word. The fake power, the HOA ego, the barking orders, it all disappeared in a puff of dust as her SUV disappeared down the gravel road. I looked at my wife and smiled. Well, that was dramatic. She chuckled. You think that was dramatic? Wait until the HOA board finds out what she did. You gonna tell them? I asked. No, she said. Let the deputies handle that. I've got horses to feed. And just like that, she walked back into the barn like it was just another Sunday on the ranch. By the time the dust settled and Karen's SUV disappeared from sight, the ranch slowly returned to normal. The sun had risen higher in the sky, casting golden rays across the field, and the horses in the barn had started to stir again, unbothered by the earlier chaos, but the silence that followed wasn't peace, it was heavy with the aftermath of what had just happened. Danielle didn't say much as she walked through the barn, checking on the tack and giving a nod to the ranch hands who had been respectfully keeping their distance. I followed her inside, still processing the sheer absurdity of the situation. So, you just gonna pretend none of that happened? I asked, raising an eyebrow. She smirked slightly, flipping open a feed schedule. It happened, but it's not worth dwelling on. Karen embarrassed herself. We didn't have to lift a finger. True, I said, but you gotta admit, it was satisfying watching her face when she saw your badge. Danielle chuckled. That part was fun. But while Danielle was done with it, the fallout was only just beginning to ripple through the community. News travels fast in a small county, and even faster in HOA circles. By the time we got back inside the house for lunch, Danielle's phone had already buzzed 5 times 3 missed calls, 2 voicemails from county officials and local law enforcement contacts. One of the voicemails was from the HOA board president, a man named David Lindley, who sounded both stunned and apologetic. Chief Myers, this is David with the Millstone Valley HOA. I just received a rather concerning report from the sheriff's office involving an incident at your ranch. This morning, please know the board was not aware of any actions taken by Karen Thompson on our behalf. If you could give me a call back when convenient, we'd like to discuss this matter further. Danielle played the voicemail on speaker and sighed. And there it is. Now they care, I muttered. Now that they know you're chief, they're all polite and helpful. It's how power works, she replied, picking up her phone and texting back. People act one way when they think you're just a regular person. The moment they realize you have actual authority, they remember their manners. Later that afternoon, we met with 2 board members from the HOA who asked to visit the ranch. In person, this time, they didn't come marching in with clipboards or fake rules. They arrived quiet, nervous even, offering polite greetings and standing far from the barn like it was sacred ground. David Lindley was in his 50s, trim with silvering hair and a neatly pressed shirt. The other board member was a woman named Sharon, who looked mortified from the moment she stepped out of the car. Chief Myers, thank you for meeting with us, David began. I want to start by saying that what happened today was completely unacceptable. Karen acted without any authority or board approval. She doesn't have the right to enforce anything, let alone make false police reports. Danielle nodded. So you're confirming she acted alone? Absolutely. Sharon jumped in. She's been difficult, overreaching. We've had several complaints, but we didn't realize she was harassing homeowners outside the HOA boundary. So what now? I asked bluntly. She shows up here again, or calls the cops again. What's your plan? David cleared his throat. We're calling an emergency session tonight. Karen's position will be suspended pending review. We'll send out a letter clarifying the HOA's actual boundaries and authority. And if it's all right with you, we'd like to issue a formal apology to your family in writing. Danielle raised an eyebrow. That sounds reasonable. But I'll be honest with you, if she steps 1 foot on my property again, or makes another baseless emergency call, we won't be handling it through community meetings. We'll be handling it through charges. Understood. Understood, they both said in unison. After they left, it only took about 48 hours for the full story to hit the local gossip mill. Karen's meltdown at the ranch became the talk of the town. It turned out Danielle wasn't the only person she'd targeted. Several other ranchers who lived just outside the HOA line came forward with stories of bogus fines taped to their gates, complaints about hay deliveries, even accusations of unauthorized livestock for simply owning goats. One man shared how Karen reported his teenage son to the HOA board for riding a dirt bike on their own driveway. The entire community had tolerated her for too long, thinking she was just annoying. Now they realized she was dangerous. The board sent out a certified letter to every resident 2 days later. In it, they apologized for unauthorized enforcement attempts made by a now suspended board member, clarified the actual boundaries of HOA oversight, and reassured residents that any future actions would require full board approval and documented. Legal basis, Karen? She went silent. No apology, no visit, no explanation. She didn't return to the ranch, didn't answer calls, and didn't show up to the HOA emergency session. Word was, she was told to step down voluntarily to avoid an official vote, but her pride wouldn't let her attend, and her silence spoke volumes. Meanwhile, my wife became something of a quiet legend in the area. People at the farmers market would stop to shake her hand. Local kids started calling her Sheriff Rancher even though she wasn't a sheriff. One local feed store made a joke sign, "No trespassing. Our hay is protected by Chief Myers." Danielle laughed it off, but I could tell she appreciated the support. She never asked for recognitions. She didn't need it. She just wanted peace and to do her job, both as a ranch owner and now as police chief. One afternoon, about a week later, we got a letter in the mail. No return address, but the handwriting was unmistakable. It was from Karen. Inside was a short note. "I didn't know. I shouldn't have called. I won't bother you again." No signature, no apology. Just those words. Danielle read it, folded it neatly, and put it in a drawer without a word. I asked, "That's it? You're not going to respond?" She shook her head. "The message is loud and clear. That's enough." And just like that, the storm passed. We didn't need revenge. We didn't need a war. All it took was the truth and a badge to make things right. Summer slowly faded into fall, and life on the ranch returned to its steady rhythm. Early mornings, long days, horses to tend, fences to check, hay to move. The air turned crisp, the leaves golden, and Karen's name became a whisper instead of a storm. It was almost like the whole ugly situation had never happened. Almost. Except it had, and the echoes of it still lingered in quiet ways. We'd notice cars slowing down near our gate more often now. Some were just curious neighbors, maybe trying to catch a glimpse of the now famous chief rancher. Others were board members from other HOAs coming to see for themselves the ranch that stood its ground. My wife, Danielle, never paid them much mind. She had more important things to do, actual responsibilities that went far beyond barking about fences and barking dogs. Her schedule as county police chief had filled up quickly, and yet,